was fortunate in the early 90s to be able to see go-go at the smaller clubs like 930 Club or many others. But then I also saw it at the Capitol Center when the Capitol Center was a big thing. So I wanted you guys to explain from your perspectives, both of you, like seeing a go-go concert or a show that was like 300 to 400 people, like the original 930 Club, the small one, versus like seeing it at the Capitol Center where it's like 18,000.
Thing about it is either way, you got a great show. It was a lot of energy, whether you was in a small spot or, I mean, of course, when you get in a big arena, it's just going to be more electric, more explosive. You know what I mean? I mean, it was good to always see go-go get to be on that same stage. You know what I mean? As the bigger acts, and to get that same response, if not a better response, a lot of the times. You know what I mean? Depending on who, what show it was or who was on the bill, but it's nothing like being in the average weekly spots though, because they had a whole nother feel to them. It was totally different than the arena feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I got to go to was the Safari Club. I always wanted to go to that.
Safari Club. Okay. Safari Club. So sorry. One of the classic junkyard recordings ever. I was out of the Safari Club.
The yellow tape.
Oh man.
The yellow tape with the blue. The yellow and blue.
Yeah, the yellow tape at the Safari Club.
Man, that was classic.
I gotta shout out my boy Sean Craig. He's the one that gave me that tape. That was one of the early ones. Because of course, being in Maryland, I'd heard Chuck Brown and stuff, but with the Live at the Safari Club, man, I was like, whoa, what is this?
Yeah.
It was like a different thing. And then the yellow and blue combination really struck out too. And Rare Essence, of course, did this too with the different colors on all the PA tapes.
Right.
And in episode 4 of Crank Radio, you guys really talk about the value and the significance of the PA tape. So I wanted, for some people don't know, explain A, what a PA tape is, and then B, why they're so significant for go-go.
Man, so the PA tape is a live recording of that show. And so one of the biggest things for the folks that came to the go-go, that was part of the audience, the crowd, and the crowd participation, was their name would get shouted out, on that tape for that night. And so that tape became valued in the streets, and that became a conversation in the streets, especially if the band hit a new song or they did an extended B section of the song, or there was a special guest that popped up on stage to rock with the band. Then that PA tape was gold. You know what I'm saying? And that became a whole nother arm of I'm going to say supporting both the music, the band, and it became a price tag, an additional price tag to not just your interest into the go-go, but to be able to still live out that night for as long as you want to, because you actually was able to get that tape.
Mm-hmm. It was like a whole nother subculture developed. Like people became, PA tape collectors, and then, it became things that people would trade. But another thing too, that made PA tape valuable. A lot of people would go, depending if the go-go was outside, they may have a boom box or this, that, and other, but the PA tape came straight from the board.
Yes,
so it was the clearest copy of that you could get. That's what made it had the most value. That's what, why I had the most value to it, because it would be the clearest copy that you could get of that particular show.
And to Rico and Shorty, the other thing that's funny is I remember at this time in the late 80s, early 90s, when this was really, I guess, at its peak, is that it was always so funny because there would be like 2 or 3 tapes a week at the minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And the volume of it, like when people would be like in the later 90s or early 2000s, when rap especially shifted to mixtapes, and everybody'd be like, oh man, he's dropping so many different mixtapes. I was like, man, the go-go groups used to drop them weekly, 3 or 4 a week, because they'd be doing so many shows. So how did you guys or what do you guys think of the volume of tapes and of the PA tapes, of the recordings that circulated all the time, that it never diminished the value of what was going on?
It was a business. It was as big as the mixtape business is across the United States and the world. Man, I was going on ×3 here in Washington, D.C. and different, sectors of the city. Like, you knew where to go to get, the hottest tape. But that joint was moving like the heyday of the 80s, of all those stories in the 80s. That tape of any individual band show, that was a hot commodity, and to this day, folks are still having, tape parties or listening. And I bet you don't have this one and this one, from the Panorama Room to the Coliseum and to the Safari Club. So it was just it was just big business, in the streets of Washington, D.C. and the DMV.
And then it was also synonymous, like with the mixtapes in New York. Like, a lot of it kicked off like with Kid Capri. His thing was, he had the hustlers riding around listening to his tapes, which then put the value on, his tapes, his mixes, because the dudes that everybody wanted to emulate was riding around listening to that. Same thing down here with Go-Go. All of the guys that was, doing it out there, getting whatever, they was, the soundtrack in their car was the latest PA tapes, or, which band or and whatever. And a lot of times that could dictate who the hottest on the street was. You could just hear it, coming out their cars.
And it would be on the Nissan Maxima.
There you go.
Nissan Maximas, the Jettas,
those
Pathfinders,
the Suzuki Jeeps.
Yeah.
Then they got the Benzes and all that stuff like that. You know what I mean?
With the amps in the back, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And also on Crank Radio, you guys have some interviews that you guys splice in. And in episode 4, it was great hearing from Marion Barry and understanding the legacy that the music had reached up to the highest levels of local government, with the mayor endorsing it. So how did you guys get that interview and put it on the show?
Man, you're talking like, this is A&B Productions. You know what I'm saying? We got it in every building, every office. But we can tell them how that went down.
It's a funny story, right? We actually just went down to the Wilson building one day, right? And we ended up getting up to where his floor was, to where his office was. So we was just about to get into the office. And, it was a guard or somebody, hey, what y'all doing? This, that. Hey, man, we doing this interview. We trying to get to, man, yada, yada, yada. And they was like, nah, you're going to have to do this. You're going to have to do that. Yeah. So evidently, he must have overheard what the guy was saying. He walks out. He's like, hey, what's going on? What's going on? Leave those guys alone. You guys want to come on in and talk with me. And sat down and gave us an interview right then and there.
That's incredible.
That was incredible, Soren. Like he was about his people. You know what I'm saying? And he gave us a time, and he gave us just some backstory, conversations of history of his involvement with Go-Go and how he wanted to see it sustained. You know what I mean? And we got that footage. Like we filmed that. It was incredible.
Mm-hmm. And that was always one of the biggest, misinterpretations of him from people outside of DC. That, I guess a lot of times, because people would, we would run across, like, man, y'all made it. Listen, man, this dude is a different kind of dude. You know what I mean? Like, he was really the people's champ for real. You know what I mean? So they may have never seen, somebody like that, or, you know what I mean? Or like had that type of relationship with the community. But that's the type of relationship he had with the community of DC. You know what I mean? So, and I just saw that they put up that Eddie Murphy is going to be playing him in a biopic now. So, I think now a lot of other people are starting to, move past, just the whole, stigma of, what happened with him and the scandal, and really look into like who the guy really was.
Yeah, Marion Barry will pop up at your cookout. You know what I'm saying? And be a part of the community. You know what I'm saying? Give his request to the DJ. he knew what was happening. But when you saw him, it was like, hey, it's Marion Barry, come on, it's the kind of thing. And he took time for everybody, outside of, what he did for Washington, D.C. and the summer youth employment, giving that a stage of employing, young folks, and supporting workforce development. But the other piece was, Soren, a lot of people don't know, he supported new companies that was having trouble getting funded, and all the challenges they had in Washington, D.C., the corporate side of Washington, D.C. He helped entrepreneurs and startup businesses, get their brick and mortars and so forth started. So, like, honestly, like Rico said, Marion Barry is and forever be, our people's champ.
Yeah, and I think it's also a testament with Crank Radio, when you guys did put that interview on the show, that the thing that blew me away about it, beyond the fact that you had it, was that he highlighted it in one of the segments you used, was we was talking about the kids playing on the buckets, the paint bucket. Because I remember seeing that when I would go play basketball in DC, or my mom, she's from Tacoma Park. She was born in DC, but lived in Tacoma Park. So when I'd be driving around or whatever, and I would see that, I just was like, man, that took me back visually to that. And then, of course, Junkyard was known for that as well. So for you guys, the adaptability of go-go, I think, is something that's also important, that, kids just playing the drums, that actually led into, one of the biggest go-go groups of all time. So how do you guys see, from the early days, the adaptability of go-go to be able to navigate and still last?
Man, it's working, in one of the Crank shows, doing the Crank mix, Rico showed, pretty much the evolution of go-go, with early Junkyard and early LL, and the fact that, if I'm not mistaken, Junk was signed the same time LL was signed, and the outcome would be a little different, maybe if Junk was in New York City, you know what I'm saying? But, during the time of moving 14 or 15, kids from DC to New York consistently may have been a challenge. But however, that's still part of, go-go and hip hop and American culture history, that both of these iconic acts are still in the game today, but they both started, at the same label 20 some odd years ago. You know what I mean? So that story is still, somewhat of an education piece that still needs to get out. But, both of those footprints are still, trailblazing right now in the music industry.
Right. And speaking of, artists that were able to really be successful, and you guys highlight them throughout Crank Radio, is EU. Of course, they had a lot of success thanks to doing the Bud, being Spike Lee and things, and then, of course, collaborating with Salt-N-Pepa, and then having to deal with Virgin Records. So on the commercial side of things, what do you guys think enabled EU to break through in a way for several years on a big commercial side of things so well?
Well, I think that, for one, EU was always one of the go-go groups that always had their own original songs. They always put out, records and albums and stuff like that, and original music. So the fact that, that they had an original song, and then the fact that it was able to take, the flavor of go-go and the energy of it, but allow it to be kind of shaped and packaged in a way that the public was already used to, kind of receiving it, coming from, the hip hop R&B angle with a mix of the go-go in there. And then, of course they, brought in, they had the Madness hats on and the shirts, so that was the whole style of the city, at the time, and what was going on. So I think that it was organic enough in that way that the city bought into it. The true go-go lovers, they understood that, oh, okay, even though they doing it on this scale, they not leaving behind, you know, what's real core DC, you know, type of, you know, go-go culture. And then, but you know, it was hot enough that, you know, and it was in a conducive enough format that was commercial enough that the rest of the world got with it. You know, it was, and I mean, it was just a hot record. You know what I mean? Just, I mean, at the end of the day, that's just what it was. It was just a hot record. You know, it was a great combination, you know, of all of those flavors at the right time. And then Spike Lee having that vehicle, you know, for the film and everything that came with it, that made it that much more of a bigger experience, you know. So to this day, you know, people are partying, and every time that record come on, they want to reenact that experience, or, you know, have a new experience.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a timeless record, like a Frankie Beverly record. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? That EU record. And Sugar Bear is like one of the biggest personalities in go-go. So every opportunity he gets to work that record, like he kills it. I was at a wedding reception with Bear and a mutual friend of ours, and they played the record, and somehow he ended up with the mic at the table and gave a show at the table, and people partied like they were at the go-go. So that is an infectious record, and it's one of the biggest records in go-go's music staple. And man, it's always exciting to see that record perform and hear that record and get the response from the people when that record is played. Like it's timeless.
Mm-hmm. And then another thing too, Soren, like I travel with Kid Capri DJing, right? And a lot of times, you know, we go to other spots, it'll be, you know, bands from other cities and other places. Now, I know DJs play the record, but it's actual other bands from other cities, other places that this is, you know, one of the staple songs that they play as a band as well. So it's had an influence, you know, not just, you know, within just the DJ, you know, circuit, or, you know, people just partying to it, but, you know, other bands, they like, you know, playing the song as well.
In the beginning, hip-hop was ruled by the East Coast. Then the West Coast rose to prominence thanks to gangster rap.
Straight out of Compton, crazy motherfucker named Ice Cube.
Hip-hop changed the world. Gangster rap changed the narrative.
I'm representing for the gangsters all across the world.
And then changed the world again.
'Cause I'll come and take your life away.
The history of gangster rap features unheard stories, unseen photos and documents, all with exclusive interviews from the founders and players who shaped gangster rap.
I think a real gangster rapper has to scare you a little bit.
The history of gangster rap, written by veteran rap journalist Soren Baker. In stores now.
Yo, what up? This is DJ Quick. Be sure to pick up my homeboy Soren Baker's book, The History of Gangster Rap, if you really want to know what we do.